So since we're a smaller group this evening, why don't we keep it informal and very interactive? Virginia Interfaith Center for Public Policy is a coalition of 23,000 members here in the state of Virginia, and consists of 700 faith communities with over 1,000 faith leaders, which is the largest advocacy voice of the interfaith community here in the state of Virginia. And so we are, our mission is to advocate for justice, whether it be social justice, economic, racial, environmental. So through prayer, education, and advocacy. And so we at the James River chapter, we had titled this meeting, Punching Holes of Light into the Darkness of Injustice. And because that's what we do. And so we are fortunate enough to be led by Kim Bobo, and Kim's done a terrific job, and she's devoted her whole life to the cause of social justice. But before we get started, I'm going to ask Charles Swadley to do an opening prayer for us. Charles?
Brothers and sisters, salam, shalom, and peace. May we tonight open our hearts and minds to the Holy One, who urges us to seek unity, healing, and harmony in a broken and violent age. To the one who is almighty, who makes our souls uncomfortable with the unthinkable hurt of this world, we plead for this one to guide our thoughts to the highest places of transformation, where hope conquers despair and faith overcomes discouragement. Create in us a new spirit to embrace the goodness of humanity in each other. Stir up in us the holy vision of the beloved community to shield us from hate and the sweetly deceptive allure of greed and self-advancement. Build up in us tonight a community that nurtures the power of love and the vision of an unflinching compassion and gentleness that overcomes all barriers. May we be infected with a steadfast and enduring germ of love against every siege of evil. May we be empowered to suffer all indignities for the call of justice to roll down our earth like a mighty, irresistible stream. Amen and amen.
Amen. Thank you, Pastor Charles. As everybody knows, the James River chapter has been focusing on the issue of gun violence. And so I had asked and invited Miranda to join us tonight to talk about the guns, the New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence. And so thank you so much for being here with us. And I'll turn it over to you guys. And thanks for being with us.
Thank you. And it's interesting because I'm actually doing an interfaith training on March 11th. So there's an interfaith group in Albuquerque that does. You guys remind me. I think I didn't realize it was a national organization because I'm just getting involved in it. So I'm kind of excited to see that. Oh, this is a big thing. This is a big movement going on. What did you want us to focus on in terms of talking about New Mexicans to prevent gun violence? Did you want us to focus on the Guns to Gardens, our group overall, or what? How best?
So, Miranda, I think would be helpful for the group to hear a little bit about how you all got started, the motivation behind it, and what you guys, the Guns to Garden project, and how that's bringing hope and healing to the communities, and then encouraging others to join this movement that you guys started since 2015.
So yeah, so we were actually two groups. So Harry had a group and we had another group, and then we just joined forces because there's more power in numbers, and we've been going since 2013. When we first started in 2013, it was a very difficult road. Like even handing out a free gun lock, the doors were slammed in our face. And so we immediately realized we need to have some strategic planning. So we basically, it was very organic from the beginning, and I think still is. We looked at where are the doors opening? even if they're just opening a crack. Where are the conversations happening, even if it's just a couple of words? And then we went from there. And so from that, we created this, we looked at gun violence as a multifaceted problem that needed a multi-pronged approach, and we created all our programs from there. We also saw immediately that the most important voices in the room were our young people. And this was way before Parkland. We were working with young people from 1 year, the first year going in, because we saw that while the adults in our community didn't want to have just the statement, gun violence prevention was contentious. But what we saw with our young people is that there was a real need for them to talk about gun violence prevention. Now we're with over 600 kids every day, every week in New Mexico, working with them closely. So that's where one branch went. And then the Guns to Gardens happened. We saw a need in our community to do, it's very difficult to get rid of unwanted firearms in New Mexico. And so we saw that that was a need in our community. So we started doing these gun buybacks. We had partnered with, I had talked endlessly and still do with Mike from Raw Tools, who I think you know. And so we started doing gun buybacks and then forging them into gardening tools. Well, that grew into having students forge them at a high school where they lose a lot of kids to gun violence. Some of those kids commit gun violence. Our best and brightest at that school just brought a gun to school, and we had to get him out of that school and get him into another school. And he was one who was forging. But a great kid. It was all vibrato, and he's not going to do it again. And now he's back to forging guns into gardening tools because we're watching him. So that's how we started growing the Guns to Gardens movement that way. We have had a hiccup in Guns to Gardens because of a certain sheriff in Farmington County. So we're in a little bit of a we're trying to navigate where we're gonna go next. But we've done 18 gun buybacks. We've taken in over 2,000 firearms, with close to 40% being semi-automatics and assault weapons. And if you guys do a gun buyback, we're happy to help you guys. Thank you so much. We're happy to help navigate that in any way that would be helpful to you. You can learn from our very dumb mistakes, most of them done by me. So you can learn from us. And then it just seemed to fit into the Swords to Plowshares model, which I'll let obviously Harry talk about that. I'm not the pastor in the room. I just have one to my right.
But we talked last week about it, how Guns to Gardens really was based on Isaiah's, proclamation to turn swords into plowshares. And so that was just a really easy way of saying we can get rid of some things that are really harming the community when people want to get rid of them, and we can turn them into something good. So that's kind of the philosophy we have over our entire group, is we're always trying to turn some issue and some problem into something better. And especially with the kids that we work, 80% of our work is with youth?
Probably, yeah.
Probably.
At this point.
And so the adults were not listening to us early on. They did not want a thing to do with us. And we found out the kids were scared to death and they wanted to have somebody help them figure this thing out. So there we are.
And then our other work obviously is policy work. So since we've been around, we've passed 6 very good gun violence prevention laws. We're at a signing yesterday for our 7-day waiting period law. We're blessed to have a governor that's on our side. Thank you. I know that was, and what nobody realized was that's the end of gun shows in New Mexico. So I was thinking it, but being very quiet about it because I didn't even want the people on our side to start talking about it because that would have made it worse. And so when they signed it yesterday, I said to the governor, hey, you do realize that's the end to gun shows. Just, oh, because I don't know how they would do them. They would have to mail all those guns, and gun shows are huge in New Mexico. So, yeah, so we'll see. But I feel like though, we have made a lot of headway working with people who are gun lovers, but we've brought to the table. So in 2 weeks, I have a presentation with the owner of Caliber Shooting Range with UNM with their Echo presentations that hundreds of people will see, where he's going to show me how to unload a semi-automatic handgun and put a gun look on it. right? So it's like how, our country's so divisive and so contentious, but how do we get those people to the table, right? We're now working very, very closely with a Farmington, New Mexico police chief, Trump supporter, Burke Society, the whole 9 yards. He's now trying to figure out how can he work with us, where can he agree? And he actually came down and testified in support of one of our pieces of legislation, which he took a hit for from his city manager and the mayor. And he's in a super conservative area, but I think the more we can bring all sides to the table is where we need to be, not just in terms of gun violence prevention, obviously, but our country in general. And who knew, maybe gun violence prevention is a way that we could actually sit at the table. And then we can talk about other things like immigration. Yeah, you never know. A girl can dream.
So we have a question from Sandra. You have a question, Sandra? Remember, you're on mute right now.
I'm curious, what kind of price range when you buy the guns back, do you get? I realize it would depend on the type of gun, and where do you get the money?
That's a really good question. So it took us a while to figure out what the exact price should be, and every state is different. So what we did, we first had them too low. Then we realized we found the sweet spot. So we do $100 for a pistol or a revolver or long gun. We do $200 for a semi-automatic rifle or handgun, and then we do $250 for your assault style weapon. We don't give cash, which means we don't get as many guns. We do gift cards for groceries, Amazon, Target, any place that doesn't sell firearms. And that's what we have found works. When we first started, it was hard just to get a buyback going. And so we funded it on our own. They were costing us between $10,000 and $20,000. So we just used it from funds we had gotten from donors. But now the gun buybacks have become more successful. So for instance, DA offices have given us money, your district attorney's office. There's attorney general money that you can go after because they have to put a certain amount of money. I think this goes for every state, that any money that they get from drugs and confiscation, is that the right word?
That's good.
That's close enough. It has to go to violence prevention. And so you can tap into those funds. We've had mayors give us money, city councils give us money, and sometimes police departments. We actually had Fiesta Auto, our auto Subaru give us money. So, but that's hard to do at first because I think people have to gain trust in the program. But then once they did, it became that became a possibility. And the one thing you might run into is that for instance, if you go through a state or city entity like a DA or an AG's office, they're not ever going to want to make it look like they were buying gift cards because that's going to look very fishy. So what we did, and we can share our invoice with you, is what we put as the invoice so it didn't mention gift cards. So it's more like facilitation, equipment, and that kind of a thing.
Thank you very much.
So we see our time is running out for you guys. So do you have time for another quick question or you need to go?
Sure.
I think we do. Yeah, our board's not here yet, so we're good.
Okay. Any other questions for Miranda or Harry at this time? Go ahead, Michelle. While Michelle is unmuting herself, we did want to let you, Harry and Miranda, know that here in Virginia, the Interfaith just sponsored a rally at the Capitol for encouraging the governor to sign legislation on gun reforms and laws. So, Kim, do we have any quick updates as far as where we're at with that?
I think our board meeting's about to start.
Okay. All right.
So-
Michelle, can we get
Oh,
you-
well.
go ahead. Go ahead. Have your question. Be quick.
I had heard that for some organizations, buybacks had devolved into a problem with some of the guns being cut up to use in these gun kits.
Yeah, that's a really good point you're bringing up, Michelle. And that would never happen at our gun buybacks, nor do I think it would ever happen at yours. And we can send you the ATF regulations on how to dismantle them, so you never have to worry about that. That they were purposely selling those to people who wanted to make those. So I don't think that's something you have to worry about, as long as you're always in possession of those dismantled guns before they become gardening tools.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit more about that too, Michelle. I want to address that point. So that's a
Thank
good
you.
question.
That's a good question, because it didn't help the gun buyback movement, that nonsense. I mean, but although I do think it helped for groups like yours and ours, that we can say no, 100% that would never happen, because we're in control of them. The police are not in control of them. So we
All right.
just have to make lemonade out of lemons there. Yes.
All right, Miranda, Harry,
Bye,
thank you
guys.
so much.
Sorry,
Squeeze us.
sorry to rush.
Appreciate-
Take care.
No, we'll be in touch. Take
Okay,
care.
thanks, John. Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Bye-bye. All right, so Kim, you're on.
Hey, I'm just gonna do a quick kind of where we are right now and kind of where we think we're going on some of this work. So in our health equity work, our unconscious bias bill has gotten through both houses and is on to the governor. It's been sent on. And we've really worked it with Commissioner Littell, so that I think, have got support from the commissioner as well. So we think the governor's going to sign it. So, you know, again, we'll know by Friday. So we'll know soon. But it's very exciting. It took us 4 years to get this. And like, we are one of the few states in the country who've managed to do this. So it's a great thing. And again, I think it only happened because of our ability to work bipartisan, you know, and so many groups honestly can't do that. And we do, you know, and very intentionally. And again, I think that's why that one got through. On community health workers, we've still got this in play. We've got budget amendments, one in the House, one in the Senate. So we have slightly different money things in both of those. We are hopeful that we'll be able to get money in the budget for community health workers, which again, these are frontline workers. They're really essential for outreach to marginalized communities. The one on health that we're not getting through this year is the health coverage for undocumented kids. That is not we did not get the money in the budget. It's not going to happen. It's being carried over to 2025. So maybe in the future, but not this year. I think a lot of the Dems who supported it didn't want this to be used as an election issue against Dems, because there's such anti-immigrant sentiment in the country right now. Anyway, I hate the thought that immigrant children are being used as a political ploy right now, but anyway, that's what's happening. On criminal justice, we led on this bill to limit the use of attack dogs in prison, right? Virginia has a problem. No other state has this problem. This is our unique problem here in Virginia. But we got a bill through almost unanimously. Again, strong bipartisan support. We worked with both Republicans and Dems on it to even develop the bill. And it's I'll be surprised if the governor doesn't sign this one, because Delegate Weber, minority whip in the House, Republican, was one of the folks we worked with on the bill, and he's already talked to the governor's office. So I think we're good on that one. We've got a bill. We worked on trying to get free communications for people who are incarcerated to be able to talk to their loved ones and family members. The bill has gotten really watered down. So, you know, it's certainly not free, but it's trying to, at this point, reduce the costs of phone calls and video calls and text messages to people who are incarcerated. I think it will help with that. It will essentially require the Department of Corrections to negotiate better contracts for these services. So it's not what we wanted, but it's a step in the right direction. I think the governor will sign that. There's an oversight bill that we didn't really have to do a lot of work on to have an oversight of the Department of Corrections. That's going to get signed. the bill to allow people who've been incarcerated for a very long time to have a judge look at, give a second look to their sentence, and maybe try and lessen their sentences. That bill got killed this year. What happened essentially was all the victims groups came up and testified and told these horror stories, and none of these people should be allowed out. And anyway, it was really disappointing, because you want to understand the situation of victims, but you also need to give people a second chance, right? So it was a terribly difficult situation. Anyway, and then automatic restoration of voting rights got from the very beginning, it got turned over till next year. So that'll be back on the agenda next year. In terms of affordable housing, we drafted a bill this year. In fact, Sheila did the Yo Person's work on this, and I'll let her talk a little bit more about this later, particularly around our plans on moving faith and housing work over the coming year. But this bill would have made it easier for congregations that want to build affordable housing to do so without going through quite so many zoning and permitting hoops. The bill got referred to the Virginia Housing Commission, and that is actually a great place for it to go, because if we can get it out of the commission with a recommendation from the whole commission, we'll have a very good shot at it next year. And there's so much interest in the bill. And again, year one running a bill, we didn't expect it to get all that far. But anyway, Sheila's done a great job on this one, and I think we've got a lot of potential. So we do want to, Sheila, be sure to talk to folks about organizing a workshop around housing and congregations in Williamsburg. We've also been supporting more money for affordable housing and a whole bunch of tenant reforms. And more money is still in play, right? We don't have the compromise budget out between the House and the Senate. So again, there's money in the House, there's not money in the Senate. So we got to get it out of the final budget. And on the tenant protection stuff, like there's a gazillion bills on tenant protection, and most of them have passed. Some of them have gone on to the governor. A whole bunch more will go on to the governor. I think a bunch of them he'll probably sign, because it's just not worth him to veto them. There may be some that he decides to veto or amend in some way, but I think he'll end up signing a lot of those. On the family stuff, we lost again on paid sick days. We got killed. We got out of committee, but we got killed in the finance stuff. And so this coming year, we've really got to work the finance committees, the money committees, figure out how we get the money to have this. And the money for it is the fact that home health care aides that are paid for by state monies, they don't have paid sick days. And so if we're going to do this, then we have to we have to fund through government dollars the part-time workers that are consumer directed, and we have to give a bump up to the agency directed home care agencies so they can cover it. So again, it ends up being roughly $10 million a year to the state to pass a paid sick day bill. So that's the place we're going to have to really sort of focus in next year. And, you would think that it would be a priority to have home care workers having a few paid sick days so they don't go care for the sick and elderly, sick. But anyway, that's the fight that we're going to have. We did get a bill really, I think unanimously through on child labor protections. And this is really quite remarkable, because in most states, they've been rolling back child labor protections. And so Virginia has gone completely against the national tide on this one, because we put out a bill to strengthen child labor protections, to increase the fines and penalties for companies that violate it. And we really did a lot of this work because one of my colleagues, Jace, did a FOIA to the Department of Labor and Industries to look at all the child labor violations. And we got 537 pages worth of violations. And So we use that data to really hammer legislators about how we had to do something more. So we're very excited. Again, this bill has not yet gone to the governor, but we expect it will, and we would be shocked if he didn't sign it. So that's a good one. Minimum wage is the big one that is still in play. It will be sent to the governor, at sine die, right at the end of this session, which will be maybe Saturday, that might go into Sunday and still call it Saturday, but it'll be sometime soon. And it is in the high level negotiations around the budget. And people are really pushing on some of the things the governor wants in order to get him to sign it. And this is the one where we've decided we should really try to weigh in, because I think our voices would matter on this one. So we've got this faith leaders letter sort of calling on the governor to sign the minimum wage. As of today, Sheila says we have 330 or so clergy signed on to the letter. We were initially going to do a press conference this week on it. Our colleagues have asked us not to do it this week because they have not sent it to the governor yet, and they are still negotiating on stuff, and they would like us to, next week would be a better time. So that's fine with us. So right now we're like scrambling. Could we get to 400 or could we get to 500? Because 500 would be such a nice number. So if you haven't signed it and you're on this call and you are in religious leadership in some formal way, sign it, or ask your pastor or clergy to sign it, or send it out to other folks you know. And in tomorrow's roundup, there will be a link to all of the people who have already signed it. So you can look down and see, who are your friends have not signed it yet, so we can get a few more signed on. So the minimum wage is still out there. The other one, I think that's really a big one for us that has passed, but we don't know what the governor will do with it, is removing the farm worker exemption from minimum wage, right? Farm workers are exempted. They shouldn't be. It's a completely historical racist exemption. We're trying to get them back in. The numbers, there really are not that many workers that are probably covered. So agriculture will not fall apart in Virginia if we cover them with minimum wage. So we're trying to get a meeting with the governor. Sheila's done lots of work on this one. So I think we've got a shot on it, but we got to get to the governor on this one. There's several other bills. We have actually this year weighed in on some of the gun bills. Now there are more than 50 gun bills. So like just even keeping track of them was a full-time job. But as was mentioned before, we did, Lori Haas called and said, hey, I'm really struggling to get people for this rally. Could you guys help promote it? And so again, I think we really helped with the turnout at the rally. And the real question on this is, what's the governor going to do on these bills? Is he going to sign them? Is he going to veto them? Is he going to let them go into law without signing them? And, I'm not sure on this stuff. I think it's hard to know. We'll, because some of them were sent already. We should know probably by Friday or Saturday, whether the governor's just going to veto all the gun bills. Because we'll see what he's done with the first ones that got sent over to him. So that's kind of where we're at. I think, we're already starting to think about, what are the things that we got to work on next year, right? And it's clear, cover all kids, right? The undocumented kids, that's going to be back on the agenda next year. Probably trying to pick back up on this no-cost communication. Clearly, faith and housing bill is going to be back up next year, and paid sick. So again, on some level, we're starting to identify the agenda going forward, because, we don't just take on things and drop them. So we need to be able to move forward on these things. So I think that's my core presentation here.
Any question? Thanks, Kim. Great overview.
Tim, I have a question.
Uh-huh.
With the gun bills and the sort of demise, I would say, of the NRA, they've been in a lot of trouble. And I'm wondering where the force behind this resistance to the gun bills would be coming from. There used to be a fear in the air all the time in legislators from the NRA withdrawing support from them or coming after them or something. But with the NRA faltering as it is in the organizational level, where is the impetus coming from?
Well, at least in Virginia right now, this remains a mostly partisan issue. And so I think most of the bills got out, they got passed, but just party line votes, or maybe Kerry Coyner voted for some, but like very few Republicans supported these gun bills. And so, you know, I think you've got a lot of legislators that are a little concerned about being primaried from the right. Or they, you know, the way a lot of bills happen in Virginia is that they are told by the party how they should vote. Now, there's a bunch of bills where you know, they're told they can do whatever they want. And then there's a bunch of bills where it's referred to as party discipline. Like, you know, everybody needs to be on program on this one. And right now in Virginia, the Republican Party has pretty much made this is what they are standing for. Again, I think what you're saying, Charles, I think it's possible to split that, but we're going to have to work with a lot of Republicans to do that. Sheila, do you want to add anything on that?
No, I think that's the crux of it.
Any other questions for for Kim or Sheila? Go ahead, Sandra. Don't forget to unmute yourself.
Kim, do you think there's going to be any kind of teacher raises? And do you know anything about that? And do you envision that there's going to be a long delay for the budget coming out? Like there was
I think there will be some money for teacher raises. I don't know quite how much it will be, but that's in fact one of the, you know, fights in the budget. I think there will be some money for teacher raises. Again, haven't been following close enough in terms of how much will be there. I think there will be a budget from what we heard literally today is that we are likely to see the budget compromise bill between the House and the Senate on Friday. And so, which means if we get it on Friday, that means they have to have 48 hours before they can vote on it, which is why they'll probably be voted on Sunday. And because they can't go past Saturday, they'll probably call Sunday Saturday, which is what they do, which is one of the oddest things. It's like, we're still in Saturday. Okay, fine. So I think we're going to get a budget out of the General Assembly, but then the governor will be able to, you know, do all sorts of amendments and line item amendments on the budget. And so I think most people think that the veto session, which is, they call it the veto session, but it's really not just vetoes. It's where they deal with all the amendments and, you know, all the stuff. I think that could be way longer than a day. I think it could end up being a several day negotiation back and forth because, you know, there's some big picture things that the governor wants, right? You know, he wants his big stadium. You know, he's got a bunch of stuff he wants. The big picture things that legislators want, they want the minimum wage. Senator Lucas wants a bunch of the legislators want sort of the cannabis market. Senator Lucas also wants toll relief for Hampton Roads. So, you know, those are some of the bigger things out there. The other big one that I didn't actually understand until just this morning is the one tax piece. The governor keeps saying, hey, I just want them to do my tax proposals, right? Well, a bunch of them aren't going to happen, right? This whole reducing taxes across the board so that wealthy people actually get the biggest lion's share of tax reductions, that is not going to happen. But the piece of his tax policy that will go forward in one form or another is the taxing of internet sales stuff, right? And internet downloads and music and all that kind of stuff, putting sales tax on that. And the difference between the House and the Senate budgets on that, the House does exactly what the governor did, and the Senate made it not just cover individuals, consumers, but also businesses when they purchase stuff as well. And the difference on that is $700 million. So it's a lot of money. So again, most of the social justice organizations are advocating for that business to business tax that was excluded in the governor's budget. Because again, it's $700 million. So Sandra, you can do a lot more in terms of raises with that. You can do a lot of stuff with $700 million, right? So again, there's just these big picture things going on around the budget. And frankly, you know, I think I could imagine the governor doing something like, well, I will sign the minimum wage if you agree to XYZ tax. So again, there's just like a lot of big stuff in play right now. And so I think it will certainly go until the veto session. And I think the veto session could well be longer than a day.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Tim, I would imagine that one of the biggest players in the faith community in Virginia is the Catholic conferences, Arlington and Richmond. And I'm wondering how they're coming down on something like the minimum wage bills and so forth. Jeff Caruso still leading that group?
He is still leading it. And honestly, I think they have a role. I don't know how strongly they play it, except on issues of abortion.
Well, that's surprising.
I mean, they do. I don't mean to say they don't sometimes support other stuff. And they do, you know, they'll testify in support of ending the death penalty, or they supported a few of the things we worked on this year. But in terms of putting a lot of energy and the whole weight and power that they could bring to the table on a lot of these issues, we just don't see it in the General Assembly. And Sheila's Catholic. Do you want to speak to that one?
Just very briefly, they haven't this year put out a statement nor an action alert on the minimum wage. Now, could be a million reasons for that. They do only have 2 people on staff. That being said, they haven't put out anything on the minimum wage. They haven't taken a public stance.
Well,
Their
Sheila,
website, go ahead.
In the past, the 2 bishops were very conservative.
Mm-hmm.
They're both gone. And one died and the other retired. So the new ones that came in seemingly had a more progressive attitude on social justice issues.
I am
have
not
not
as
seen
familiar
that.
with the new bishops, but my inclination is to say that once there was an established trend, it's easier to continue along that trajectory than to build a new one. So
And
even though
the truth, go
Yeah.
ahead. Sorry.
No, even though the folks who were bishops 10 years ago are not there anymore, the paths they set in place carry on. Go ahead, Kim.
Well, I was just going to say, one of our colleagues, her daughter is being confirmed tonight, and the bishop is going to be there, the Catholic bishop, and she's going to ask him about the minimum wage.
Well,
All right. Okay, any other questions?
Sheila, could
just
you tell?
wanted-
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Betsy.
That's okay. I just wanted to remind folks that in the chat room that Sheila posted a couple of sites that you can go to. One was for the bill tracker for the VICPP priorities, and another one was regarding the letter that was mentioned about if you were clergy person that you could send to the leaders in your congregation. So just if you want to check the chats, if you would like to get those sites. That's
Great.
it.
Thanks, Betsy, for bringing that to all of our attention. Kim, you were going to say?
Yeah, Sheila, could you talk for a second about workshops that we're hoping to do this year around faith and housing?
Absolutely happy to. And I'm going to be relatively brief because I know I see January CERTA on, and I know we want to talk a little bit more about on the ground stuff around preventing gun violence and responding to gun violence. But I will say that, you know, Virginia Interfaith, we are focused on the policy piece, but the on the ground piece is really important. And around affordable housing, there are so many congregations around Virginia that want to build affordable housing on land that they own. Congregations are seeing decreased attendance and want to see how they can ensure that their property is continued to be used with that mission focus. So in addition to supporting and leading the charge on this bill around faith in housing that would streamline the zoning process, we're also going to host a few in-person workshops around Virginia, definitely one in Richmond, potentially one somewhere in Northern Virginia, potentially one somewhere in Hampton Roads. It would be great to have one in Williamsburg with congregations who are interested in learning more about how to turn their property into affordable housing, whether that's because they will be closing the, you know, merging into a different faith community, or whether they are still going to have like a smaller church on the one hand and apartments above or next door or whatever the case may be. About 20 congregations in Virginia have already done this, and there is a strong desire to see it continue to happen. Kim and I actually had a great conversation earlier today with somebody representing Virginia local government, and local governments are very protective of their rights, but even the local governments in Virginia are really excited about this idea and want to see it come to fruition. So yes, would love to partner with you all. In addition to the Safe Surrender event you'll be doing in the spring, maybe over the summer, do a workshop on faith communities and affordable housing, or as it's called in some other states, yes, in God's backyard, to push back on the NIMBY, not in my backyard attitude. So if you are interested in that, send an email my way. I would love to talk more about it. If you're not interested in it, still send an email my way because I will be inundating your inboxes.
So, Sheila, one of the things I know you may want to touch base with Charles Cheek, and you may have be a good resource for this project or these workshops. So, I know he's bouncing back between another Zoom meeting and ours. So, but if Charles, you're on our Zoom meeting, just
perfect.
know that we plugged your name in there. So you'll
see
probably be hearing from Sheila pretty soon.
I see he responded in the chat. Yes, I will put a note to self on. Oh, fabulous. That's really awesome, Pastor Charles. Thank you.
All right, great. So due to time, I think we should move on unless somebody has a burning question or issue or anything else as follow-up regarding Kim's information he shared with us, or Sheila. If not, then we'll move on to January CERTA. And so for those of you who do not know January CERTA, January is the program coordinator of a program called Hand in Hand, which is part of a hospital intervention violence prevention program. I messed up the title there a little bit, but January can straighten me out on that. But anyway, January is they're located at the Riverside Medical Center. And so I invited January. She was on with us before at our previous Zoom meeting. and chapter meeting. And I invite her back again because what she has to share, I think, is very impactful and a wonderful resource in the community. So January, with that being said, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, John. And I just want to thank all you members for allowing me the time to share the space with you. As John pointed out, I am the program coordinator for a hospital-based violence intervention program at Riverside Hospital. Riverside is the only trauma center in this part of the region on the peninsula. So all victims of severe trauma, gunshot wounds, major assaults, major stabbings, Riverside is where they get transported and will they'll come through. What we do is we provide, this is an evidence-based model that when we have a kind of a golden hour upon entry, when victims of trauma and major violence come into the emergency room, to meet them at their bedside and to provide an intervention, culturally competent, trauma-informed care. And part of that is, so the medical team obviously addresses the medical issues going on, but we really try to get to the root causes of why the violence occurred and help the individual and their family, assist them with safety planning upon discharge. We can get them connected to community resources. We can, I mean, sometimes it looks like just being there bedside with them to help them facilitate navigating the healthcare system and the next step sort of thing. We are 100% grant funded program. We are one of the only resources in the community for victims of community violence. We have a lot of great partners in the community that provide support and resources to victims of domestic violence, but there's very few resources in our community here in Hampton Roads that help serve and provide resources to victims of community violence. So our intervention program focuses specifically on community violence. I dropped our web link in the chat. It kind of gives you a little bit more background about what we do and how we do it. There's also a great PDF that you can download on the effects of trauma and signs and symptoms of trauma. It could be a really good resource for anyone that you might come across that either has been a victim of violence or has family members that have been a victim of violence. And I guess overall, what I would say is that we, again, the being hospital-based really allows us the opportunity to reach these victims and their families, you know, right when something, probably the most traumatic experience of their life has occurred. And I've been with the program about 2 years now, but the program has been in place at Riverside since COVID, since 2020. So any questions or anything?
Well, I know January, what you are doing there at the hospital and in the community is wonderful, and you're blessing your staff and the program to the community. So I mentioned to January that I would love to be able to just spend some time there and check out the clinic. And as far as like for Pastor Charles or any of the faith leaders in the community, do you get quite a bit of referrals from the faith community for your services or for your program?
We do not. I have attended some of Pastor Cheek's Pastor Cheek events. He always points out it doesn't have an S, and and
well, it's apostrophe S. It's possessive, so you're grammatically correct.
He always reminds everything I go to with Pastor Cheek. He reminds us there's no S. But he has been a great community partner of ours, just really with connecting. When I first started at the program, getting out in the community, kind of understanding who the players were in this GVI space, gun violence intervention prevention space, Pastor Cheek was instrumental in helping me get connected and meeting different folks that are actually, you know, boots on the ground in the community. Because what really makes our hospital-based violence intervention program work and what makes it sort of a gold standard program is its community partnerships, is knowing who in the community is doing what, connecting individuals upon discharge to the resources and the organizations out in the community that can sort of continue to empower them and lead them on this path of promoting positive alternatives to violence and eliminating the negative impacts of violence. And that really is kind of building a positive village around that individual and their family, because that's really what we're doing. We're trying to promote positive alternatives to violence and then sort of removing the risk as much as possible in their lives, because statistics show that once you become a victim of violence one time, you have over an 80% chance of being re-injured again, being another victim again. And so our goal and the metrics we track for our program is re-injury rates, retaliatory justice involvement rates, and then their ISP goal successes. And so an ISP is an individual service plan that those who enroll with us, meeting them where they're at, what they would like to, work on in the next 6 months to a year, because we provide case management post-discharge up to a year with our clinical intervention specialists. And that could look as simple as, getting food stability, finding a higher paying job, but it can be as complex as what you were all just talking about: stable housing and affordable housing, access to mental health care, connection to another, like a psychiatrist, and medication management, follow-up appointments, things like that. So it's an array of different goals that individuals set for themselves. It could be just healthier living. They want to have access to, living healthier, being around more, positive individuals, things like that. So those are the metrics that we measure. But we absolutely do take community referrals. So if you are to ever get someone that either has been a victim of violence or something just happened, you can always reach out to us. And if we can't help them, we will make sure that we get them connected to who might be able to assist them.
That's great. That's wonderful. Any questions for January? Well, January, we thank you for being with us this evening and joining us and sharing what you all do over there. It's wonderful, and we'll be in touch about setting up a time to come visit your clinic. So
absolutely, sounds good. We'd love to give you a tour. And then again, the in the chat is the website, and all our contact information is there. We have a 24-hour hotline, and then my email address as well. So thank you again.
Thank you, January. Appreciate it. All right, so we were scheduled to have. Oh, there he is, talking of speaking of the devil. Hey, Scotty. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm so sorry I'm late. My wife didn't make it home, and I was cooking dinner for my girls. So sorry, I got caught up in that.
We understand. Life happens. So for those, so Scotty, if you have a few minutes, we'd love to hear from you. So if you have about 5 minutes you can spend with us?
Yeah, you bet.
Okay, great. I don't recognize you with your glasses, man. You look so much more scholarly than when you're at the blacksmith shop. So some of you know Scotty from when we did our Raw Tools event back in April of last year at St. John's Church of God in Christ in Newport News. So Scotty was the blacksmith for us at that event. And so we have some people here, Scotty, that attended that event. So Scotty did a great job. And so we like to tease Scotty and say that, we were kind of the stepping stone for Scotty's path onto the Raw Tools and his great involvement that he's been involved with. But really it's Scotty's spirit and his desire to get involved with Raw Tools. And but Scotty does a great job, and we asked Scotty to join us tonight for a few minutes to talk a little bit about his involvement with Raw Tools. He's co-founder, along with Pastor Stan, for the Raw Tools South. And just to refresh everybody's memory, Raw Tools is about turning guns into garden tools, but also there are other services that they provide, workshops as far as preventing violence and dealing with conflict. So, but Scotty, thank you so much for being with us. We're delighted to have you. And I'll just turn it over to you and share a little bit about your story and how Raw Tools South came to be and what you all are doing.
Thanks, John, and thanks again for working me into y'all's gathering. I'm an artist blacksmith, and I started volunteering for Raw Tools, making some garden tools for them, and slowly, as we Quaker types say, way open for me to spend more and more of my time doing this. And John is absolutely right. The first time I worked as a demonstrator with Shane was at y'all's place. And then did some more of that with him. And we started a Raw Tools co-op, but now we're not calling them co-ops. Mike Martin and Shane, who started Raw Tools about 10 years ago. Mike's out in Colorado Springs and Shane's up in Philly. And we are starting a branch here in Asheville, North Carolina, that we're calling Raw Tools South. And we officially kicked off the first of the year and have been traveling all around. A couple weekends ago, I was in Memphis, Tennessee for a gun buyback. And tomorrow I get to leave the house at 4:30 to go to Charlotte to do a demonstration and cut up some guns over in Charlotte. So things are just happening for us. And we are so fortunate that people are calling on us. And, you know, it turns out there's a lot of guns in America. And there's lots of opportunities for us to be cutting them up and transforming those things into something life-giving. And so now we just got a trailer that we filled up with generators and bullet traps and chop saws. So when churches want to have a gun safe surrender event, we can roll in, help train everybody, bring all the tools. We have insurance now that covers those kinds of events. So have some of those lined up coming up where we're going to go to different places and help folks run safe surrender events. And then we take the gun parts that we collect and turn them into garden tools and make art out of them. And then we also, like we did with y'all, or like I did with y'all, we'll go and sometimes do demonstrations or sometimes speak at gun violence prevention summits or gatherings. And so we are just trying to spread the word to let people know there is hope. And there is something there's a part for all of us to play, and we can actually do something in addition to writing letters and voting. There's some hands-on stuff that we can do. And I have found this work super gratifying and have been shifting more and more of my time into this work. So there, I just gave you all a bunch of word salad. And I'm curious if y'all have any questions for me or things that I could answer.
Hello.
I'd be happy to try.
Scotty,
Betsy.
where in Charlotte? I just drove back from Charlotte today with my son and grandchildren, and I was talking with my son and daughter. In fact, we're talking about from Asheville having folks come down now, and you're starting your own guns to gardens. And where in Charlotte is your event tomorrow?
It's actually at Davidson College, which is just north
Oh.
of Charlotte
Yeah.
in Davidson, right there near Lake Norman.
Yes.
Um, So we are going to be at the Davidson College Presbyterian Church.
Okay. What time? I just wanted to pass it along to my,
Yeah, the summit there is going to be from 9 o'clock till noon tomorrow.
okay.
And we're going to be, doing a demonstration, and there's going to be a worship service that we're going to participate in. And there's going to be some other alternatives. It's mainly church leaders and pastors who are coming together to sort of try to help inspire them to take on this calling.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, good to see you.
So, Michelle, did you want to ask Scotty your question that you had asked? Scotty, I wanted to let you know that we had Harry Eberts and Miranda Viscoli from the New Mexicans to Prevent Gun Violence on earlier on the show. So we actually had a chance to talk to Harry last week as well with our planning team committee group. And so we were talking about you, and he said, "Oh yeah, Scotty's a great friend. We're good friends, man."
Oh yeah, what a wonderful spirit that guy is.
Oh, he really is. So, but anyway, so there was a question earlier, and I wanted to bring it up to you. So when Miranda and Harry were on, a question came up regarding concern, like when you cut up the guns, that they were maybe using the parts for like these gun kits.
Yeah.
And so I know that the alcohol, tobacco, and arms, they have specific guidelines. So the reason why I'm revisiting this, Michelle, is that this is a concern and questions that come up when we talk to people about doing these safe surrender gun programs, gun to gardens, etc. So, Scotty, do you want to fill in a little bit more information on that from a, I guess, legal perspective, or making sure that everything is copacetic with doing this?
Thank you, John.
Absolutely. Yes. So the ATF has numerous different ways that you can destroy a gun. And a gun really comes down to this part called the receiver, which, depending on the type of gun, can look different, but it's basically the place where ammunition feeds in and it gets loaded into the chamber to the base of the barrel and the triggering mechanism. And so that's called the receiver. And some of you probably heard the story about the company Gunbusters, where they take the gun apart and they just destroy the receiver and they save all those other parts. And then they sell that as a kit, and they give you a link to a store where you can buy the exact receiver that you need to make that a gun again. This is not what we do. We don't sell any of the parts of any of the guns until they're completely transformed into something and will never be a part of a gun again. So that receiver, if I had known I was going to do this, I could have had some diagrams for you. But you can smelt them, which melt them all the way down. You can crush them, which they don't define that, or you can cut them. And there are 3 places in the receiver: the front wall of the receiver, the rear wall of the receiver, and through the triggering mechanism. You need to cut it in at least 3 places at an angle. And then at that point, it is considered destroyed. And then those parts are technically scrap. And there would be no way to put a gun back together about that. But a lot of people heard this story on a podcast or on the radio, and we have been out assuring people that we are not playing that shell game.
Thanks, Scotty, for clarifying that. And also, just to let you know, Michelle, and for other people that we'll be talking to, it's a common concern and question. One is insurance. So that's something that we will talk a little bit more about at the planning committee. But my understanding, and maybe Scotty, you've heard some updates from Mike Martin regarding, I believe in talking with Harry, he was talking about that Michael's looking into a 1-day insurance policy type of thing. And have you heard anything from him regarding the status of that? If it's, I know it wasn't finalized, but it was, I think it sounded like it was getting close to it. Do you have any updates regarding that?
Yeah, I know some churches have gotten quotes from the same person who insures Mike. You know, and they have been in the neighborhood of a $5,000, you know, for a day event, which really is, you know, maybe a 4-hour event or something. I know Mike has been trying to work, seeing if there's different ways of trying to make that more accessible. I know that is one of the things that we've done as part of our Raw Tools South is we have insurance so that if we come with our trailer or our equipment to a gun safe surrender event, we bring our insurance, which covers the event and the volunteers. I know y'all are a little far from us, but we're kind of doing that to the events that we're going to. But I haven't heard, I don't think Mike, and I know the folks at the Presbyterian Peace Fellowship are also who they run the action circles, which train people how to do safe surrender events. They're also, it's a stumbling block for a lot of organizations.
So, and also for the group, I did want to make one other point regarding the safe surrender program, is that when a person, if a person is there with their gun as it's being chopped up from a legal standpoint, there is no issues involving, the key is that the person is there when you chop up the gun. And so from a legal standpoint, there are no repercussions from that. So they have a right to do whatever they want with their gun legally. And as long as they're there witnessing it and it's cut up according to the alcohol, tobacco, and firearms guidelines, then you're good to go. That's my understanding, and we should not have any issues from local or I know Pastor Charles Cheek had talked to an ATF representative, and he basically said from their standpoint, they're good. They're good. So to check with the local and state agencies. So just to clarify that. Now, real quick, I know we're kind of running over, but this is a point that came up, and Charles, you had mentioned this. And so I want to clarify and differentiate, or kind of, there was a little bit confusion with our planning team, Scotty, regarding the difference between a safe surrender program and then what Raw Tools does. And so it's the way I like to think of it is that the safe surrender program provides the gun parts, and then Raw Tools is a little bit more broader compass or broader operation, if you will, on providing a little bit more service or more encompassing service than what a safe surrender program. Is that kind of a fair way to describe it? Or Charles, correct me if I'm not capturing the question that you had regarding the two.
I think you covered it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Perfect. Well, and so one other thing that I'll say is one of the reasons that we say gun safe surrender in place of gun buyback is that for those exact reasons, legally, we are not buying the gun from them. It's, as you were saying, John, it is their gun. We're providing a free service for them for their gun. And if we choose after their gun is cut up and we give them a gift card to something afterwards, that is a gift and a thank you to them for them doing something that we think is responsible, just like how NPR sends you a tote bag when you donate to them on the radio. So that is why gun buyback is language people know better, and it looks a lot like a gun buyback, but that is why we say safe surrender. And John, I think you're talking about it was right on. We do cut up, like people will just call me and say they have a gun that they want to come up, cut up, and they'll bring it to me, or I'll meet them at a church or something and I'll cut up their gun for them. So we provide that service. We also, Mike and now us, have also gotten into helping support people run gun buybacks, coming with saws and equipment and showing people exactly what you need to do and how to do it, and training, again, just as a way to further this. But we also are kind of this bigger picture of turning the swords into plowshares. And in Micah, he goes on to say, that everyone will have a fig tree to be under and not be afraid. And that's really what we're trying to work toward, a place where everybody feels safe and not afraid. And so how we live into that last part of that is kind of not as structured as the cutting up guns and turning them into garden tools.
Great. Is there any other questions for Scotty before we wrap up here? So real quick, Scotty, I believe you said that you're going to be having a safe surrender event in your Asheville area in June. Is that correct? Did I understand that to be there?
Yes. I believe it's June 8th. It's that second weekend of June. We haven't nailed the date and the location down. There's another church that they're in the process of confirming that they can do it.
So if anybody out there knows of a church that might be interested in partnering with us with this, we're hoping to do it in the spring, sometime in May, early June. So we're any churches that you think would be interested in joining us and partnering us in this project, please contact me and let me know, and we will follow up with them. And also, if you have any information about fund grants for this project, please feel free to let me know, or let one of our members know on the planning team. And then also the last thing is that Scotty, I think we should do a road trip from Williamsburg or the Hampton Roads area and come on out on June the 8th to join you guys at your Safe Surrender program. So,
oh my gosh, we'd love to have any of you who wanted to come and volunteer to be a part of that, and or just kind of witness it and be around. Love to have any of y'all come. And if I don't know if y'all are associated with a Presbyterian church, the Presbyterian Church USA has a grant program. They're doing a decade against gun violence, and there's funding through the National PCUSA if y'all can find any Calvinists to work with.
Okay, so that was the Presbyterian USA and the National.
Yeah, they have a there's a link to it.
Okay.
The PPF, the Presbyterian Peace Fellowship.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That runs
when we did the
to gardens.
Yep.
Where you did the action circles.
Yep.
They have a link on there to that.
Okay.
And I know they have been giving money to other groups who've been doing that. But
great.
Yeah, it needs to be a Presbyterian church who applies for that.
Well, Scotty, it's great to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. it's wonderful to see you and talk with you again, my friend. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to have Reverend Michael Burnett do the benediction, and then we'll call it a night. But I want to thank everybody for joining us and being part of this program. And we will be following up with some updates and other information regarding the Safe Surrender program. And we're excited. So we got a lot of good connections with the New Mexican to Prevent Gun Violence, Raw Tools South, Raw Tools out of Philadelphia, Shane Claiborne, Mike Martin, the founder of Raw Tools. So we're making really, this thing is blossoming, and it's a wonderful thing to see. So Scotty, keep up the good work. You guys are inspiration for us where you guys are out in Asheville, one of my favorite places in North Carolina, by the way. So yeah, maybe we can get a convoy to come out there and join you on that June 8th event. So we'll be in touch about that too.
Yeah, it'd be great.
All right. So Reverend Michael Burnett, we'll turn it over to you, and then we will officially close out the program.
Will you be in an attitude of prayer with me? We go forth from this virtual space into a world which needs us, to do what we can where we are to help build beloved community, and to bend the long arc of the moral universe in the direction of justice. Today and every day we commit ourselves to mend what is broken, to heal what is hurting, to illuminate what has been obscured, to right what is wrong. This is a tall order, and it won't be accomplished entirely in our own lifetimes. We work to plant trees of righteousness and peace in whose shade we will not sit and whose fruit we will not eat. We know that this work is not for our own benefit, but for the betterment of our collective humanity. But we need not feel alone. We go forth today and every day with the foundational work of those who have come before us, the continued work of those who labor alongside of us, the promised work of those who come after us, and with the eternal light of truth and wisdom which encompasses, guides, and transcends all of us. So go forth, beloved, to change the world and to be changed in the doing. So may it be.
Amen. Thank you, Reverend Michael. Thank you, everybody.